check, I'm good. So I'm Max Ceron, Max Ceron, CWB Association Welding Podcast. Today we have a really cool guest, Welding Podcast.
The show is about to begin.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the CWB Association Podcast. My name is Max Ceron, and I have brought another fantastic guest from my neck of the woods, poaching the local community the best I can. I got Chase Lettvenuk with us here, and he is also a part of the Regina chapter and involved in many of the things that is going on in this community. Chase, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself, Max?
Pretty good. I practiced your last name in front of you and still dropped the ball when it was go time.
It's okay. There's people have known me for years, and they don't even bother.
So Chase, let's start the interview at the start here. What is it that you do in Regina? What's your job?
So, my paychecks say that I'm a welder for National Tank Center. They're a subsidiary of a company called Trimac, which is one of the biggest hauling companies in North America. So they transport fluids like your oils, your ethanols, your gasolines. They do lots of hauling of bulk powders, so food, different foods, concretes, stuff like that. I'm also a apprentice heavy duty mechanic as well. Just try to do as many different jobs as I can, less likely for them to send me home.
Well, that's a very important thing going forward in today's world is having enough skills to make yourself valuable so that companies can't let you go. Now I've known you for a number of years now, and I've seen your career path take a number of different swings. And I think that is very interesting. One of the reasons that we wanted to kind of bring you on the podcast, because I know that it's an interesting story and a story that's becoming more and more common among welders. A lot of people go into school to become a welder. They might take a welding program and even follow through all the way to Red Seal. But then 10 years down the road, they may not be welding anymore. They might be doing something different. And I think that you've had quite a bit of success in a number of different areas. So let's go back to the start and let's say, where are you from? What's your roots? Where were you born?
So, born in northern Manitoba in a town called the Pas, small mill town. So they have a paper mill and they have a few other resources around there. But kind of grew up north of Prince Albert in a little town called Christopher Lake. So basically got moved there around the time I was 4 or 5. And then did all of my elementary school and all the way up to high school, or even to pre-employment welding. And went to the high school in town, the comprehensive high school called Carleton. Mm-hmm. Mostly because I wanted to be able to, they did a big push before you go to school. It's like, oh, this is the trade school. This is the one where if you like to do projects, this is where you go. And so that's kind of how I first started in the trades.
And did you know you wanted to get into the trades? Like in high school, did you already think like, I want to do a trade? I'm not sure which one, but there's something I want to do.
No. Well, I had ideas of different things I would want to do. But basically the thing that attracted me to it was just the fact that, growing up at that time when Discovery Channel was doing their Monster Garages and American Choppers and American Hot Rods. And I always those are just the shows I watched. So when it's like, oh, we do these courses so that you can do this, I'm like, oh, cool. I helped my dad with some projects around the house growing up, but never got to do my own thing. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of one thing that really pulled me towards that school. And going through high school, I liked a lot of the courses, did the mechanics, the machining, the welding. And there's actually a point where I thought, you know what, maybe this stuff isn't for me, because those classes were, they weren't very academically focused. So it seemed like a lot of times I was just wasting my time. It's like, okay, they give you 5 projects, you do your 5 projects. And it's like, majority of people, they take the whole year to do it. But then anyone who's a little keener or anything like that, it's like, oh, well, I'm bored half the time because I can only pad for so long because, there's
And they
only
didn't
so
have
many
extra
beads you already
projects for
finished.
you. Like I know that's the thing that schools struggle with,
Yeah.
and when at the association, we try to have like even projects online for schools so that
Mhm.
if a student gets ahead, they got something to do. I mean, back then when you were in high
Mhm.
school, did your high school have much for the keeners? You know?
Not particular. It was basically like, you have your time where it's like, okay, we're supposed to be doing learning in class this week, so we'll be doing some safety stuff, and we'll have a test on Friday. But between Monday, where they teach the stuff, and Friday, when you take the test, it was a little more open. So
Mm-hmm.
me being kind of ADD, I was bored out of my mind. So like, okay, well, at least if I do academic courses, at least I'm constantly stimulated.
Yeah. So what
But
did you
then,
do right out of high school then? Did you pursue academic or what happened?
so I basically, the plan was to go to U of S, go be an engineer. That was something I'm really interested in. But I kind of hit a wall partway through high school because I was working part time as just at a Staples, a lot of hours there. Plus, I
Mm-hmm.
was, um, doing all the sports and things like that. And I was like, you know what? I'm kind of over school. And I happened to be in the library during lunch one day, just doing some homework so I could go to work after school. And the shop teacher happened to be in there and he was like, yeah, tell me about your welding stuff. And then he started talking like, yeah, maybe I will do that. And I ended up just signing up for SciAst instead. I was like, you know what? I can do that. That only takes 8 months, only cost me $2,500. That's pretty okay.
So you took the SAS Poly or SciAst course then in
Yeah.
Prince Albert,
Yes. Yeah. You betcha.
and it was 8 month or the 8 month course you said. So that's the
Yeah.
34 weeker.
It,
And how
yeah.
did it
Yeah.
feel?
I liked it. Like it was it just seemed like something that fit. The teachers there were pretty good, and there was enough that if you asked them kind of a weird question about something, they actually were like interested, like, oh, you actually want to know about this? Okay, so and you start
Mm-hmm.
learning about the more technical side of it, and that was kind of my thing. It's like, oh well, I know a lot of people, at least all the people I'd met at the time, were just, hey, I just want to put the metal down. I don't care how it happens. As long as it looks good, as long as it passes, I'm happy. And that was my experience of welders at that time. I was like, oh, I'm going to be something different. And I thought that might spin off to other things, but just kind of was ended up meeting people like yourself, people who are actually interested in it. And I was like, oh, there are lots of these people. I just was never exposed to them. I always
Yeah.
thought of, welding is the guy that the farmer's kid does. And as long as it holds, it's fine.
Yeah, and I hate the. Well, I shouldn't say I hate it, but retraining farmers' kids as a teacher sometimes was very frustrating. Like my uncle told me this is how you do it. It's like, oh man, I gotta fight uncle. You know. So, you come out of the 8 month program, the program. That's a level 1, level 2. You got a few hours, and lots of the times, what I hear from northern communities in Saskatchewan or anywhere in Canada, really more remote communities, is that it's sometimes tough to find a job. Now, in today's market, like today, right now, anyone could find a job. Like you could throw a hat and find a job right now. But 10 years ago, it was a little bit tougher. Was it hard for you to find a job? Were you able to get something right out of college? How did it work?
Yeah, no problem. I had, at the time, it was around 2011, 2012. Oil was kind of at its height.
Mm-hmm.
And I had friends who had gone to Lloydminster area for different trades, a few electricians, some plumbers, stuff like that. And he's like, "Hey, the place we were staying, they had a free room. They said, rent will be cheap. Just if you can find a job here." And I called a few places and ended up working for a company that was like a subcontractor to one of the big oil field companies called Foremost, where they
Mm-hmm.
built those big crude tanks that you see in the fields and oil country sort of deal that collects all the fluid, all the crude.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they said, yeah, you got a job. So I went out there and started work. I think I worked there for better part of a year. Just basically because I was a subcontractor, you find out what the people who actually work for the company are making, and it's like, oh, it's $10 an hour difference. Like, oh, whoops. So I was making over $20, which isn't the end of the world, but like I said, when you find better, you do that. So I went to another shop for a few months. It was definitely a higher paying job, but basically I was there for about maybe 2.5 months, and then they went and they did a big layoff. They were figuring out how they were going to do it, and so I had gotten more money for only 3 months, so I ended up at looking for work again. Ended up I was off about a week trying to find work, and ended up everywhere I applied, they're like, yep, sure, here's a job, you want it, and ended up being job at Advanced Engineer Products at the time at Lloydminster. They basically like, oh, we've already done your criminal check, your paperwork's done, and I hadn't even accepted the job yet, but so I just kind of went with it. I was like, oh, that job sounds kind of interesting. Get to do a little mechanical, a little welding, stuff like that, and ended up staying there for like 4 years or so.
And Advanced has got a good reputation, because you get to work with some stainless, some aluminum. You get to try different things out, and trailer service it never runs out of work.
Exactly. Yeah. I enjoyed it a lot. Got my red seal in welding through them. Even they were short on mechanics, so the foreman just kind of was slowly starting to give me more and more mechanical work, to the point where I actually went and got my heavy duty trailer technician ticket which is just a glorified first year in Alberta. About a few months after that, I was like, okay, well, I want to start working on trucks. Might as well keep on going. Found another job. Again, it was paid well. It was but it was actually just working for a guy who had a mobile rig. So I was just like kind of his hand. But after a couple of months, it was just my skills weren't what he was looking for. He was looking for someone who was more experienced. He was just hoping he could get a first year and pay him like a first year. And
but he wanted the work of a journey person. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So I just remember there was a job where it's like I did a clutch one day, and then the next day he had another one for me. And there's a couple times where I had some questions, and it's like, we just did one yesterday. You don't remember? I'm sorry, I don't remember what 80 thou feels like. And you don't have and your dial gauge is broken. So that's our deal. So that didn't last very long. And that kind of had me just kind of looking like, hey, maybe there's something else I should be doing right now. And I kind of took some time,
and you're still in Lloydminster at this time. You're still in this area the whole time. Yeah,
still in Lloydminster, but there was kind of some pulling towards Saskatoon at the time. Mostly it was just family reasons. It wasn't far, but I found myself driving to Saskatoon quite a bit, and a job with Liquid Air or Air Liquide opened up. Just working on their sales desk, just inside sales job. And it was going to be a drop in pay, but I saw some good potential there. And talking to the manager at the time, there was a lot of good growth opportunity, if not at Saskatoon, in the Midwest, so Saskatchewan, Manitoba area. And so I went off, started working my career at Liquid Air.
So, a lot of people in the industry, and it's something I always tell students, end up in sales, and it can be in a variety of roles. Like pretty much everyone at Lincoln was either an engineer or a welder, right? Like that's just, and I actually have heard from like top brass that Lincoln is looking to hire more welders to be sales reps because they find that they have a better retention and better service for shops from welders that become their sales techs as opposed to engineers. And I know Air Liquide, Praxair, Lindy, Messer, Valen. They all have Red Seal welders, Red Seal mechanics on their service lines. In terms of doing service work or sales work.
Mhm.
But in your mind, when you're like, okay, I've been welding.
Mhm.
I dip my fingers into mechanical. I like mechanics. How did you think I'm gonna apply for this job? Like I don't know if I would have even looked at it and been like, man, not for me. Have you done sales before? Did you already know that you were good at it, or did you just walk in like a pigeon with a blindfold? I don't know what the hell's going on, but I'm gonna do something.
Yeah, I did have sales experience when I was working at Staples. I was actually one of their better selling, like for the electronics, so laptops and
Mm-hmm.
computers, all that stuff. I'd done some technician work for them as well. So I've always been kind of just interested in learning all the facets to whatever I do. Because, like you said, if you can do 5 jobs and then the next guy can only do one, well, when it comes down to, oh, we're a little slow, or
Mm-hmm.
we need someone to move up, they're going to go for the guy that can do everything, not someone who's this and that. And I think that's kind of a work ethic my dad's kind of put into me growing up.
Yeah,
He's always said,
be useful, right? You want to be the best
"Mhm,
tool in the toolbox.
mhm, exactly." Well, and yeah, and you can definitely have people who are really good, like much better than me in one little spot. But if you just need something fixed, well, sometimes there's like you going back to working at Vans. If you got, if you just need this big of, 6-inch
Mm-hmm.
weld, but it's in a place where you have to take a whole bunch of mechanical stuff apart, you're going to send the guy that can take it apart, weld it together, and then you don't have to have multiple people in the same job.
Yeah, no, and that's huge. Being able to have one person do many roles is just a time saver. Like it's just logical,
Hmm.
right? Now,
Hmm.
when you made this move to the sales desk,
Hmm.
did you feel like you were kind of stepping out? Because it's not like you went to work for mom and pa's convenience store. You went to work
Hmm.
for Air Liquide. It's like probably like
Hmm.
one of the big three,
Hmm.
suppliers in Canada, if not North America, and
Hmm.
and and a very old established company. Liquid Carbonics goes back over 100 years. They
Hmm.
were a part of the original signing of both AWS and CWB Association.
Hmm.
So, like, I mean, this is a storied, historic company. Did
Hmm.
you feel like it was easy? Like you just dropped in and like, yep, show me, or was there a lot of training that was required?
There was a lot of, uh, there's definitely a lot of process to everything. And that's one thing I've found with big companies in general, like even the company I work for now, Trimac, it's very much, uh, it's a big process to do most things just
Hmm.
because they have all of this history, all this legacy and stuff. But as far as getting the job, it wasn't too bad. I think they like the fact that getting someone red seal welder, getting someone who's has a history in sales, someone who is somewhat technology savvy, like going to
Yeah,
be
don't
able
say you're
to
too
keep
good at
up.
technology. I've
No.
seen you on some other projects. So,
I could usually figure it out. How about that? Uh, yeah, it just kind of seemed like a win-win for them. And I was actually only in the Saskatoon branch for about 6 months before they actually asked me to move to Brandon, Manitoba.
Mhm.
So they needed someone to be, uh, uh, they call it a coordinator for the branch. So making sure that your inside and outside sales teams are working together, making sure the driver's doing what they need to do,
Yeah.
basically manager stuff without being able to fire and hire people and without the
which
money,
which
obviously.
is a little bit of a blessing because the HR side of things is when things get real bureaucratic.
Hmm.
But so like you're kind of a rolling stone right now. Like
Hmm.
you're coming out of the paw. Where I
Hmm.
got friends from the paw, and it's a beautiful part
Hmm.
of the country, but it's been struggling financially for a while now. The
Yep.
paper mill shut down, so it was a big
Hmm.
deal. Um, you end up in Lake Christopher Lake, which is beautiful again.
Hmm.
Over to Lloydminster, then to Saskatoon, and now you're getting shipped off to Brandon. Like, good thing you didn't have a lot of stuff holding you around. Like, I mean, and this is for the people that are looking to get into these lines of work that there is movement that's required. So if you got a young family, things would get pretty complicated, right?
Yeah. And I haven't even moved to Regina yet.
Yeah. So you're in Brandon. You're
Yeah.
coordinating. You're helping. You're kind of leveling up within Air Liquide now. What happens now?
I'm at the point where I'm already looking at going up to the full outside sales, covering a large area sort of job.
Mhm.
I've been talking to some of the guys who are about to retire or that we're looking at, and so like there's opportunities coming up in Winnipeg, a few other places, and actually Regina wasn't even on my map for a while, but then there was essentially one person was let go at one point, and so it was a 2-person territory down to one guy. The guy
Mhm.
did it by himself for a little bit, and it was like, this is too many kilometers for me. And he actually moved on to another company as well. So it was kind of oh hey, we need someone quick. So I
Right
legitimately
now.
had 2 weeks. I was coming to Regina for the farm show or the Ag Progress show,
Yep.
I think.
The farm progress show. Yeah.
Farm Progress show. Yeah. There's so many names, they're so similar.
Mhm.
So I was coming down anyways, and then at that point, the guy who is the regional sales manager for basically Northern Ontario to Saskatchewan was like, okay, we're going out for supper the night you come in, and then he was just like, hey, this job's for you. If you want it, it starts in 2 weeks. Like, oh,
Pack your
so
stuff.
exactly. So it was basically just like me going, okay, looking on Kijiji that night and like, okay, line up this place, this place, this place. Hopefully I can find a place to live, sort of deal. And yeah, that's
Well,
what
it
brought me to
sounds like your
Regina.
boxes probably weren't even unpacked from the previous trip. You probably still had everything packed up.
I was in Brandon for about a year and a half, almost 2 years.
Okay,
So
so knowing single young guys, yeah, your stuff was
yeah,
still packed up.
it was still packed up. Yeah. There were things in boxes still.
Yeah, yeah. The clothes and the weights are out. Everything else is still put away.
Well, that's what holds the TV up.
All right, so then you move to the thriving metropolis of Regina, right?
Yep.
Which is the capital of all things small. So what was that? You came in, it sounds like it was like carte blanche. Here you go. Here's
Yep.
our location, and the Regina one also has like the Ready Arc, attached to it. So it's got a little bit more complex. Was the one in Brandon also Ready Arc with the rentals and stuff like that?
No, they're actually run as 2 separate businesses,
Mm-hmm.
but they just happen to be in the same building just because that's just what worked out. They both needed places at the same
Yeah.
time, so they just, oh hey, we're putting this big fancy building in Regina, so let's get someone else in there to help cut the rent, sort of deal.
Well, and it was a very mutual agreement. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
I think it benefited both sides really well.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's and really, there's how many times where something happens where a guy comes in and he's like, "I just dropped off my machine to get fixed." He says it's going to be 2 weeks. Like, do you guys have a new machine I can buy? And it's like, okay, well, we have a machine you can buy, or you could just hand off to the next guy and be like, "Hey, this guy can rent you a machine for a month if you don't need to."
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times they want to buy something small, a little MIG or something like that to get them going. It's like, okay, well, here you can get the rent the exact same one you usually have, and you
Mm-hmm.
don't need to worry about pinching pennies.
Yeah.
But that goes both ways too.
Yeah. So when you came in to
Yeah,
Regina,
yeah.
this is kind of when I met you,
Mhm.
right? So how did that happen? Like, remind me how I met you. Because like you weren't a part of the chapter in Winnipeg, were you?
No, not no.
No. And you weren't a part of the chapter prior to leaving Saskatchewan.
No. So essentially, was kind of in a situation where like I don't know anybody. I didn't know the area that well. I think I'd been doing the job for 6 months or so, and my manager at the time had just like, okay, well, let's try focusing on certain areas. So like I would go for egg production. There's so many places that build egg, and we had a few customers like your
Mhm.
your Right Ways, your Morris Industries at the time in Yorkton and a few other places. And so focus on egg. And then I came to the point like, hey, focus on schools. And that was one thing I figured was like, hey, if I can try and get into SAS Poly and try and present my stuff so that the students, they think of liquid air first, then that
Mhm.
might be a good stepping stone. Because they're going to start as welders, but they're going to eventually be foremans. They're going to eventually be lead hands, and they're going to have a little more of a say. Or if they just need stuff for themselves, they just need gloves. They just need a box of rods so they can practice. So I think that's when I'd met you. As I'd come into the school, and then I'm pretty sure you mentioned that the Weldcom, the opening night was like that week, and I was like, oh, cool. And I said, I think to my boss, I'm like, could I expense this if I do it? And he's like, yeah, for sure. And then I think after that, you guys had like a Lincoln and a Fronius night, and I was like, man, this is awesome. And I think I met Kevin during that too, and
Mhm.
kind of started like, oh, hey, there's some coming back to when I thought back in the day, I would think of welders as just people who want to glue things together. All of a sudden, finding people who are passionate about it's like, oh, people interested in this new stuff. Like I would see something working for Liquid Air, being like, oh, Lincoln has this new technology. I would love to see it in person, but
You don't get the
it's hard
opportunity.
to
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, if you don't happen to be in that situation, all of a sudden it's like, oh, hey, I can go to these things. I can talk to people about welding stuff, and they're not just sitting there thinking, okay, when's this guy going to try and sell me something? Because
Mhm.
that's always been the thing. I like talking about welding, but when you're in the sales position, they're just waiting for you to give them a price at that point. If you just want to talk about something that's cool, yeah, they don't usually want to talk to sales guys about that.
Mhm.
Makes it sound like you're trying to pitch them on something.
Well, and that's the thing that, it's so inherent about the association and the chapters
Mm,
is like when you move, if you go to a new area, you just like the
mm,
chapters will immediately introduce you to a whole pile of people that are into the same stuff you are. You know what I mean? Like,
mhm,
and
100%.
that's what we're doing. And I was teaching at the college when you came by, and I can't stress enough. I just had a meeting with Sebastian the other day. We went out for supper. Sebastian from Lincoln, Sebastian Tremblay,
Mhm. Yep.
and we were talking about how important it is for salespeople.
Mhm.
The from every sales company, like it doesn't matter if it's Messer, Lindy,
Mhm.
Valen, whatever it is, but getting involved with your local chapter gets you in the schools, it gets you in the small businesses, it gets you into
Mhm.
the presentations, it gets you out there, and it's easy. Like it's all set up already.
Mhm.
Like it's minimal work,
Mhm.
and let me
Mhm.
tell you, the students love when you like yourself you did, and before you, Todd from Praxair used to do these like packs. Okay, first day of school, you go to school, you don't know what the hell's going on, you don't know, but the supplier has it already set up. Hey, come by
Mhm.
our shop. We'll give you a toolbox with everything you need in
Mhm.
that toolbox at a big discount, $150, and it's got everything you
Mhm.
need to get rolling. That makes it so much easier for the students and takes so much of the stress off.
100%. 100%. Yeah, because and really, like when I went to school, like for pre-employment, I had no idea what I needed. Like they
Yeah.
gave you a list, and it's like, oh, you need 6 pairs of gloves. Okay, what's a good glove? What's a bad glove? What am I going to
Hmm.
burn out? And found that out pretty quick, especially when you're first starting and you don't know how close putting
Yeah.
your hands to hot things are going to affect your gloves.
Yeah, helmets and gloves. Your first helmet becomes a puddle, and your first gloves burn real quick. Grabbing hot steel, teaching kids stop grabbing the hot steel. Use dang, go get your vice grips for crying out loud. Stop grabbing. Yeah, I know it smells kind of like barbecue, but don't. Your gloves are too expensive. $30 a pair to buy them. Like nobody wants to waste that. Like,
No, not at all.
all right. Well, this is a perfect time to take our commercial break. We'll take a quick break here for the advertisers and sponsors of the show. And then we'll come back with a little bit of, what happened after Air Liquide and, what's going on in your life now. So stay tuned, everybody, with Chase Lettvenuk here from the Regina chapter and from National Tank Services. And we are back here on the CWB Association Podcast. My name is Max Ceron. We have Chase with us from here in Regina, my hometown, and also my home chapter, Regina chapter. And you know what? For the people that are listening, I still come across people in the industry that are like, what's a chapter? Come on, get with the program, everybody. Every major center in Canada has a chapter for the association. Talk to them, talk to me. I'll connect you. Become become one with your local chapter and get involved. And I will help you connect with hundreds of people in your area that are like-minded into the same cool things that we are into. And it's all free. It's all free. So Chase, this is right where you start now in the story. You know, you're a young sales person, manager, I think, at this point for, Air Liquide in Regina. Boss is saying you got to get more connected. You come to the college. I introduced you to the chapter. What was that like? You finding out what a chapter even is, what it does, and and then you getting kind of wrangled into becoming a part of it. What was that part of it for you like?
Well, it was kind of funny because realizing after a couple meetings, it's like, oh, I actually have been a member, but it was the Saskatoon branch. Basically, at one point during pre-employment, someone had come in and said, "Hey, check out, sign this sheet here, put your email here, and you can use this card to get discounts on certain things." I was like, "Oh, cool! I like discounts." Kept it in my cart, forgot about it for years, and
Mhm.
then yeah, all of a sudden it's like find out, oh hey, this is that thing that they kept on talking about, but I didn't hear anything else about. So yeah.
And then it was
Uh,
like, oh wow,
oh,
like this is a real thing.
yeah. Oh, this is where people actually talk about this stuff. It's not just theory now. It's like, oh, I get to see Lincoln's two-wire filler metal system, the
The
hyperfill,
hyperfill.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was, I remember that taking a minute to get used to.
Yeah,
Like
that was
trying
pretty
it, it's
cool.
just so
Yeah.
fast. But yeah, so from there, I worked that area for a while. Actually got a job offer from a company called Rockmount. They do the maintenance and repair welding supplies. I was familiar with a few of their competitors,
Hmm.
but they had started to want to get a footing in Canada.
Yeah, and
And
that's a niche. That's a niche market. Like you only have like the
mhm,
Eagle Alloys.
mhm,
You got the Buellers. You got a few
mhm,
odd companies out there that'll do like the nickels and the hard
mhm,
surfacing and that weird
mhm.
non-certified spectrum, but above and beyond certification, really.
Exactly. Yeah. They were a great company to work for. They had lots of it's still, because they're not a huge company, it still feels like a family kind of company.
Hmm.
Uh, there was a lot of positives to them, and it's a really cool product. It's just a lot of their structure was based on an American very much driving to all these something that's a little more population dense, being able to stop at all these different types of shops and have all these different problems. Where I find Canada is a little more, we have to do this to code because we have this CWB standard for
Hmm.
all these things that we build. So we assume when we repair stuff, we're going to need to go to that level, which is a great way to think. But
Yeah.
it makes for a lot of driving. It was a little too much for me, and I kind of, after a few months, driving out to BC and
Just kind of burnt
doing,
out.
getting kind of burnt out, finding that I was like, ooh, every 2 weeks, every month, I'm having these days where I'm just not there anymore. It just wasn't my thing anymore. Had to say, hey, sorry, we tried. We got some good milestones, but I won't be the guy to be able to do this. I'm a homebody. I like to be home every night. I like going to bed at a certain time. Uh, so I started looking at some other opportunities, and I think I had done a few interviews, job tests at like Brant, the big production shop in town. Figured that'd be a
Hmm.
good ladder to climb. Um, and ended up National Tank posted like the day I basically was like, okay, I've gotten a few options. I got a management position offered at a local gym. I got other positions for different jobs that keep me here. and National Tank Farm. Oh, that's almost perfect because I loved working at Advance and Lloyd.
Mm-hmm.
They even had offered me to come back, and I was like, I like Regina. I had some stuff going on, girlfriend that I didn't want to leave yet, sort of deal.
Mm-hmm.
And still with today, thank God. And got started working National Tank, and it was kind of a good situation because they don't do a ton of welding there, so I still get lots of time to do mechanical work, so I can kind of make my journeyman rate, but work as an apprentice. So that's kind of a bonus.
So are you going to start working towards your heavy duty mechanic now through the company?
Yeah, exactly. They're very set up to get people through it. They have a great apprenticeship program where essentially they'll you get your EI while you're gone. They'll boost you up to about 80%, and then I think if your marks are above a certain point, they'll top you up again, sort of deal.
Oh, nice.
So if you come back and it's like, hey, I got all 80s, I got all 90s, whatever, they're able to say, okay, all right, there you go. You just need to stay for so many months. But they're like you said, they're a good company. They're big company. So
yeah, they're big. I've known lots of people in Saskatchewan. There's a lot of truckers. People might not know that, but there's a lot of trucking companies and truckers and truck repair facilities and tank facilities, because we are basically like the center of Canada, and everything rolls through Regina. We're on the number one for train and car. So, everything at some point. So we got train, like we got Procars, we got the G's, we got all these transportation services.
Yeah.
And it doesn't dry up, and they're generally very good paying jobs too.
Yeah, it's pretty reasonable. Like, it was the best offer I had gotten. It was as close as it matters to $40. So
good.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Now, have you gone
nice.
back to do your rounds of school? Have you gotten back in the desk yet for heavy duty mechanic?
No, I actually went unpacking into a place I just moved into and found my books for heavy duty mechanical. I'm not signed up yet for my next bit of schooling. I think I need a few more hours before they'll let me do that. And I'm pretty sure once I just get my boss to sign a piece of paper how much I've done, it should be fine. But because I've been there for about 8 months now, roughly.
Yeah.
So I should have enough to at
do
least.
Do you miss sales at all? Do you miss that world at all? Like, you were in it for a number of years, and we had a chapter member on in the chapter before, Dylan Holloway, who also was a welder who went to sales and then went back to welding. So like, do you miss it, or you had enough?
I am glad I had the skills I got from it, because just learning about business as much as I did from talking to people at big multinational corporations, you find out all these cool things, and all of a sudden you come back to welding and it's just like you can appreciate more things. So some things were just kind of like, oh, we do things this way. It's like, oh, well, because I've seen both sides, I can be like, okay, I can understand their decision for this because they have all these criteria to meet. Or I can say it from the other way too, where they've always done it this way, and you realize, oh, you can do it this way because I've seen the product or I've seen the service, and they're like, oh, that saved us money. And it doesn't seem like it's a big push because I'm no longer a sales guy. So I just have those skills. But
no,
really,
that's very true. Those are very important skills.
And really, every job has sales involved with it. When a job's brought into you, you have to sell how you're going to do it. Or if they're trying to say, hey, we want to save money, we want to do this repair, and you have to be able to add the value of what is the benefit of doing the proper repair versus the band-aid fix, sort of deal. Like, band-aid fix might get them through safety, but next safety comes around, that's going to be a lot more work now.
Yeah. Now, do you ever find yourself being on an encyclopedia now that you've been, sales for a couple different companies? You can be, like, oh, hey, you know what? Part number 793-11442 would be the perfect product. I think it was last listed at $17 a pound.
You know what? I haven't had that exact thing, but there are times where it's like, going up to your supervisor and being, oh yeah, we need some 11T052s. What? The zip cuts. Are you sure that's the part number? Can you bring me the box? I'm like, no, that's the part number. Trust me.
I know.
I know. Yeah. No, that has come up a couple times, but it's not a regular thing. But it did build up a skill of when you go to charge parts out, there's more parts I know the numbers of just because, you've built the skill. So it's like, oh, okay. You start noticing all these different tendencies. So it's like, oh, no, that's not the right one because that digit there means it's for a tapered spindle, not a cylinder or spindle. Oh, okay, that's what that means. Sure.
Well, and it's interesting because years ago, when I first got one of my first supervisor jobs in a welding shop, I had we hired this young kid, and he had come from sales. I believe he came from Praxair at the time, and he started in sales, was selling welding stuff, and then got interested in welding. Then went to school for welding and became a welder. And then he came to work at Brandt, and he was on my team there. And he looked at blueprints like a salesperson instead of like how welders look at them in terms of as a welder. So he would come up to me and be like, "Oh, this part's not fitting right." And I'm like, "Oh, which one? Like the upper shaft part?" And he's like, "No, part 1144-2." And I'm like, part, and I had to look. So he was going off the parts list with the actual part numbers and remembering which parts go in which part, which is actually a way smarter way of doing it than, my old fart way of being like, oh, that's the upper guide shaft, which doesn't say anything that I just know that's what it does. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I really appreciate, and that was, God, that's gonna be 20 years ago now. This is right before Lean and 5S really started pushing hard because now everything has to have part numbers written on it everywhere you go. Like if you're in a fab shop and you're not putting part numbers on every part, you're 30 years behind because that's really just the way it's done now. Because there's way less mistakes when you know the part numbers.
100%. Well, and it's funny because like we're very high tech on most of our stuff, except for welding material. So aluminum is a part number, steel is a part number, and you just say how many
generic.
feet you did. Yeah, exactly. So it's like, all right, so I used a piece of plate that was this big. So it's how many linear feet is that? Oh, great.
And it doesn't matter if it's like a 5351 or a 4100 or
Nope. Nope. Doesn't matter what type it is. Doesn't matter.
Is it the shiny steel or the not shiny steel?
The part number is literally steel and aluminum. That's an easy one to remember. But
well,
yeah.
You'll be the one to change this. You're going to be the next person in there. You're going to be like, hey, you know what, boss? I think we should maybe break this into at least a couple categories.
I've brought it up, but we'll see. We'll see.
So, in this career path, mechanic to sales to back to welder to sales to mechanic. Okay. What's next? What do you want to do? Do you feel like you got a good spot in this company? You want to climb in here and see kind of where you end up? It sounds like it's a fun place to work. Or do you want to kind of explore something else?
Currently, it's the plan A companies for me is always to move up. I've talked to about we're basically building up the Regina branch, just getting more good hires. Just because a lot of times we can't keep up with our customer accounts, and that's what gives us money, as opposed to fixing Trimax just to write it off for Trimac more than anything. We're just a maintenance crew then. So as that grows, there's going to be a new foreman position coming up. Or more lead hand positions as well. So I'm already in the running for our next lead hand position once we get a couple more people. And yeah, that's the goal, is to get another red seal, have my on-road heavy duty mechanical and my welding, good combo. And if I want to go and do my off-road stuff too, that might be a good option too. And a lot of the training is pretty relevant for even National Tank too, because like a lot of hydraulics on your boom trucks, your vac trucks, anything like that. It's all relevant information. So
no, for sure, 100%. Like I I worked for a hydraulics company building cylinders for a couple of years.
Mhm.
Superior Hard Chrome it was called. They were mainly a chroming shop, but they had a cylinder division.
Mhm.
And that was when I probably got some of my best experience in working with exotics, chrome, nickels, stainlesses, and then working in the crazy high tolerance world of
Mhm.
cylinder repair, where
Yeah.
you'd have these $1 million cylinders come in and like the one eyelet's screwed and you gotta remove it and replace it and put it and weld a new one on without throwing this thing out even 1/1000th of an inch, or else it's
Yeah.
screwed.
Yeah.
And those are when you're working, there's a millwright, there's a hydraulics guy, there's
Mhm.
then everyone works as a team. You
Yeah.
learn so much because you're learning
Mhm.
from everybody. And when you're not welding, you're on the tools with them because then you're just there and you're their
Yeah.
helper, and they're like, hey, you take these lines apart or drain these, and
Yeah.
then you see even accidents. Like I saw a ball bearing go through a guy's leg once because he cracked open a fitting with the thing still under 20,000 pounds of pressure, and
Yeah.
well, that's not going to work.
No. Well, it's funny too, just talking about tolerances, because like a lot of stuff that we do is just, a lot of maintenance, a lot of repair work. And you're always hearing like, oh, it has to be within this percentage of this percentage. Man, I don't have blueprints for half my stuff. It's like, we need a place to put wheel chocks. Everything's covered on the side here. Can you fab something? And it's like, okay, well, I can't do the design I did last time because there's something there. And so you're trying to figure out all these different things and using the material you already have because they don't want to buy new material for that one job. So it's like,
Mhm.
okay. So you end up with super thick material holding this little thing on. It's like, okay, well, it works.
Yeah,
It's not going to fall
outside
off.
the boss's office, cutting down the hand railing. We need some pipe.
Not quite that far, but almost.
No, and I
Almost.
mean, I remember being on site once we were doing a conveyor system up in northern
Mhm.
Saskatchewan, and we get out to this job, and I even thought on the way up there that it was weird because we weren't taking a truck with steel with us, and then we got told the materials were there. We
Yeah.
get up there, and when we get there, the first thing our boss, our lead hand at the time, because I was like 19 or 20, is like, "All right, so where's the materials? They've been dropped off already. Oh yeah, the materials are all here. Okay, where are they? They're over there." And he pointed to a structure of the old setup, and uh, that's where you're getting your material from. So it was all just torches and zip cuts, and we had to cut apart the old one to build the new one. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow, but man, you learn lots.
Well, yeah. You can save it. You can save stuff.
Yeah.
Is it worth it? Maybe not. But sometimes parts are a month out.
Yeah,
And you
well, and
gotta.
especially northern remote Saskatchewan, you're not ordering steel and it's getting dropped off in an hour. When you
Mhm.
live in the city, you get spoiled. Like, oh, we ordered 40 feet short. Oops, you can get on the phone and 40 feet will show up by the end of the day. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Or you can even just jump in your truck and go pick it up for work.
Mhm.
But when you're up in the middle of nowhere, it's like I remember we were running stringers for stairs, and they had all these old stairs that we had cut off, but we were like 2 steps short. And he was like, "Well, I think Bob, 2 farms over, has a couple stairs from one of his projects that came apart."
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, here we go. Like
Yeah.
now we're gonna be trespassing somewhere to steal 2 stairs. Like
Yeah. Exact. So many weird things like that. That's
yeah.
yeah.
So for
Beautiful.
the people listening, let's try to do the association pitch, because you are
Yeah.
on the executive for the Regina chapter, and you
Yeah.
do great work, and well, all the chapters in Canada do great work, and obviously I have to say that, but I believe it, as the
Yeah.
past chair for Regina and just across the spectrum of what the jobs are. What Let me break this into 2 sections. One, what do you get the most? What satisfies you to keep you on the board? Because it is work and you don't
Mhm.
get paid for it. It's volunteer
Mhm.
work, and it can be stressful sometimes, and these
Mhm.
things can be a little bit up and down, and you're working with volunteers, and it is what it is. But what keeps you here? What keeps you in the Regina chapter?
Uh, I think the main thing is just the fact that as I grew up, oh, like welding didn't really seem like as much of an option. Like I went to high school thinking like, oh, I want to try this for the class, but I never thought of it as a career at the time. Um, I just like everyone else been told, oh, you need
Hmm.
to go to university. Hence why I was leaning towards an engineer. But then all of a sudden realized, oh no, 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 you can still do all right and not need tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. You can do well, and And it's not like, oh, if you're a welder, you're stuck as a welder for the rest of your life. How many things have I done, and I'm 30. So,
Mhm.
and that's it just kind of shows like those skills are very transferable. And that's one thing I've learned throughout all the jobs I've done. It's like, as long as you care and do a little bit, it's always going to be useful later. You can always, you might not need an exact detail, but the principle you learned from something is still going to be useful.
Mhm. That's
Yeah.
awesome. And
That's,
then the
yeah.
second part of the question is, you know, what do you see for the chapter going forward? What would you like to see the chapter do better? What could the
Mhm.
community do better for the chapter? You know, what's the future for the Regina chapter look like for you?
Well, I've been wanting to just use the chapter as a good place to uh, start figuring out events and things like that we can do to, for one, let the people who are coming to the events know about welding, what kind of opportunities, what the CWB Association could do for them, sort of deal. And also, just as we're getting those funds, as we're building these things, is just helping out those schools. So when you do have the keener who is a little ahead, he might be able to find out, oh, hey, here's some material. There's this thing called Skills Canada. This is one
Mhm.
of the things you need. This is one of the things you can do. And then all of a sudden they start learning. You get one all-star at a high school. Now all of a sudden that program gets more funding, just because we're trying to uh, push more awareness of like, hey, trades aren't going anywhere anytime soon. You're always going to need stuff glued together. You're always going to need stuff rebuilt. Uh, it's a good job. It's a great option. And I felt growing up, it was very much, hey, university, you need to go for this degree. You don't need the degree. It's great if you do. I would still consider going to university, but
Mhm.
I don't have a reason to right now.
I'm literally signing up for another university class this afternoon. Like, I mean, it doesn't
Yeah.
need to stop, right? Like, I mean,
Mhm,
life is long, and
mhm,
it's your time. I
mhm,
mean, this is what I say to a lot of young people is like, get in the trades first,
mhm,
work for a bit,
mhm,
get that money, get that knowledge, and then decide if you want to go to university. Wait a year or two, then decide, do I want to go to university? Do I want to be an engineer? Do I want to be whatever? Number one, you'll have some cash. You're not going to be in
mhm,
the hole. Number
mhm,
two, you have a little bit of life experience now. So going back to university when you're a couple of years older, man, let me tell you, it's way easier. Because I went
mhm,
to university right out of high school, and it was not for me. It was so hard, and
mhm,
welding was not. I could just work, and I had lots of energy, and I was in
mhm,
shape, and it was fun. You know, I had a
mhm,
blast. Like the cruise and all my traveling was so much fun. Going back to
mhm,
university 10 years later was like also way more fun because
mhm,
I have time and I'm not in
mhm,
debt. And it's like,
mhm,
and there's no rush. It's not like, it's not a race.
mhm,
People are always like talking about the next destination. It's not about the destination. It's about the drive. Like think about road
mhm,
trips, you know, like,
mhm,
hey, we're going on a road trip with buddies to go watch a hockey game in Edmonton. You know, half the
mhm,
stories are about getting there. You know what I mean?
mhm.
Like
Or coming back.
or coming back, right? So that's how
Yeah.
life works, right? Is
Yeah.
it's not all just about A to B's. It's about the line in
Yeah.
between too. So
100%. Yeah, and that's one thing finding too. Like a lot of people I have friends with, they straight out of high school went to university, and they just did their basic arts and sciences, whatever, just trying to figure out what they want to do. And it's like, well, you don't need to do that at a university. You
mhm.
can easily do that just by, you know, you could get a job somewhere doing something that interests you, and hey, maybe in 2 years you didn't like it, but at
But now
least
you
you
know.
tried something, as opposed
Mhm.
to I went to school and I still don't know what I want to do, and I'm been there for 3
30
years,
30 grand in debt.
30 grand in debt. Yeah,
You know.
yeah,
All right, man. Well, this has been a great interview. I really enjoyed it, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us here.
for sure. No, it was awesome. It's I have to get caught up on some more of these episodes.
Any shout outs for anybody? Anything you want to say or push or promote?
Not overly. I don't really do too much on social media or anything like that. I just like talking about welding, and I like a lot of the people in the Regina chapter here. Think we're gonna I think what the association's doing in general is good. It's great. It it just seems like it's growing and it's going in a good direction. That's yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate it. and I got
Cool,
a thumbs up from Chase, so I'm good. So I'm not fired yet, so we're good.
No.
All right, man. Well, thanks a lot, and for all the people that have been following along, I hope you've been enjoying the podcast. We're creeping towards that 100th episode, and we got some special news coming out in the next couple of weeks for the 100th episode. So stay tuned because we got some stuff. We're making some deals, and there's gonna be some crazy stuff going on around here. So keep following along, and again, also I know Chase, you're not on the socials, but follow us on the socials here for the association because we got some announcements coming out soon. So thanks a lot, Chase, and thanks to everyone that's been tuning in.
We hope you enjoy the show.